All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here live on WYSL today. Again, give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Live on WYSL until 1 p.m. Or if you're listening on the rebroadcast over at WACK out in Newark, appreciate y'all listening as well. Plus all the online streams, a Free Solution, the Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, and the Kevin Wilson page. Wherever you're listening today, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you. Podcast too. All right, and hope everyone is staying safe and warm out there today. It is quite snowy out. I know I'm snowed into my house right now. You gotta love, like, I get the plows are going through, they're clearing the roads. I got like 4 feet of snow at the end of my driveway right now. Don't have anywhere to be in a hurry, so just waiting for them to get the parking lane so I can shovel myself out properly. Excuse me. And but besides that, plenty to talk about today. A few things. Here's the direction I want to go for today's show. Of course, appreciate any comments. Y'all have any topics that you want to talk about listening online that you'd like me to discuss? Happy to hear those. Leave them in the comments, and we'll get to those too. But here's the direction I want to go. There's a couple things that the Democrats, Biden administration are doing right now that it's that philosophy of, well, the government's gonna break your leg and then offer you crutches to help you out, and the government's saying, oh yes, we got you. Aren't you so lucky that you have us? Otherwise, what would you do? And that's how I see things going with the testing program, these proposals to do masks. I mean, this has been a thing for a while, since the pandemic started, right? There's this attitude that if government isn't doing something, then that thing isn't happening at all. And I'd love for you, the listeners, to let me know, like, where do you think that attitude comes from? Like, is it a genuine belief that without some central controlling authority, that things can't get accomplished, that things won't move forward? Or is it more self-centered than that? Is it that politicians want to look like they're doing something? They want to be the hero in the narrative that they tell about themselves, and therefore they tell their constituents and they tell their voters. Is that why government does this? Because there's situations with how we've responded to the pandemic. Again, there's a presumption that government is the only one who can do things. But often what happens is that government intervention, particularly when it comes to producing goods related to addressing the pandemic, has not only not been the right solution, it's often gotten in the way. And Shelley comment says, crutches that are the wrong size, of course. Yeah, no, it's often the case too, right? It's like not quite the right solution either. And so that brings us to a couple of things, right? We sort of touched on, like, the testing issue, right? So the Biden administration, they want to make all the health insurance companies pay for tests. You're supposed to be able to get like 8 tests a month. And okay, so like that's cool, that's fine, I guess, but like there's a few logistical hurdles that like need to be worked out here, right? Like, so first of all, like there's some insurance companies that are trying to figure out, well, how do you adequately cover this? If you have like a health savings account or something, you can make it like a medically eligible item and cover that. But like if you're just, not using something like that, and you need to go and get those, do you do it over the counter? Do you pay for it that way? Like the logistics of it can be worked out, but they haven't been worked out. It's just, again, a dictate coming from the federal government, and now we have these things. Again, the other thing that we need to consider, and something that I have wondered aloud about before too, is, are we going to see a rise in the prices of these tests? Because if they know that even under emergency use authorization, which many of these tests still are under, that they can get paid for by insurance, is the incentive to raise prices. And if they raise prices, do the products that you get on the shelf go up too, right? Are they going to go up because they know that, like, they can have get whatever price they want from the insurance companies. No, not quite whatever price they want. The insurance companies are going to do some due diligence to I'm sure try to keep their own costs down. But a lot of times when you create these artificial scarcities, you get people who get these goods. They're not in the short term. They're not paying any more in insurance because of this. At least they're not going to see it. They're not going to notice it. It's going to be bundled into all the other increasing costs of insurance, right? It feels like it's free, and you're like, well, why not get more tests? Why not overconsume? Why not have more tests than I really need, and I'll just test more often than necessarily makes sense. Even if I'm not going somewhere, even if I'm not symptomatic, well, because I get these 8 tests for free anyway, I might as well get them. Prices can help us manage supplies more effectively. What insurance does in this case is it effectively takes the price out of the equation for the consumer, for us. Because again, if I can get 8 tests a month covered by insurance, well, I might as well use all those 8 tests. I might as well get them. Maybe I'll hoard them. I don't know, but I might as well get those because, well, I can't find them on the shelf anywhere because, well, suddenly the supply is getting sucked up by all these other people who are getting through the insurance. So why not take what I can? And that's how it ends up spiraling. I couldn't. And then, then you have that justification for the rising of prices. But again, if you have tests, some of which are going to be, a little bit more expensive, some are going to be, a little more, less, whatever, more effective, less effective. We need to, have consumer transparency on this stuff, but we have the availability of these just on the market still. And we have the FDA standing out of the way with this stuff. And people are able to access these. More tests are able to be produced on the market. Why is this something that the state needs to solve? It didn't need to actually solve this problem. And we see this in so many areas of government, but especially on the COVID front. And, I remember at this point, well, not even at this point, like 2 years ago, we weren't even thinking about this. At this point, 2 years ago, it was still, I think at this point, the Democrats are still talking about how it was racist to be scared of coronavirus. That's where we might have been at this point 2 years ago, which is weird to think about that. Look it up. It might have been February when we started that, but just totally bizarre relationship to what became a pandemic. But we can look at other supplies too, where members of Congress, usually the Democrats, but sometimes the Republicans too, say like, well, there's no possible way we can solve this temporary mass shortage without resorting to government control of the situation. We need to control the supplies. We need to make sure we have control of masks and ventilators and everything else. And government will ensure that the production of these things gets everything to where they need to go. And here's where I want to go with this, right? I'll talk about the mask thing specifically because there's a new Democratic proposal to send masks to folks too. We'll talk about that briefly too. But where I want to go with this is that when you do this, when you put government in control of everything, when you set the expectation that that's going to happen, you create more tension, more animosity, more expectation that the government needs to solve every one of your problems. And that does two things. One, it drives the expectation that the government needs to act quickly to resolve these things, and that can lead towards authoritarianism. It's the road to serfdom. And the other thing is that by driving that central control, you create more possibilities for political violence. There's some, murmurings among, again, usually on the left, talking about like Civil War type of stuff. Like, all right, is the language getting so heated right now? We're heading towards a new Civil War. Well, okay. If you want to cool that down, then lower the stakes. What are the stakes of power, of seizing control of the executive branch, of seizing control of Congress? And how much control do they have over the lives of both the people who affiliate with them and the people who do not wish to be affiliated with whatever party's in power? When you have stakes that are that high, when you have that much tension, it does matter. That power can change or destroy lives. All right, so thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Again, appreciate you all being here on this wonderful snowy Monday. And And that's where I want to go with this is heading in that direction. There we go. There's the music. I was waiting for us. Like I'm pretty sure we're coming up on a break now. All right. Appreciate you joining us, Free Solution. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. Yeah. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's coming up on a break. Yeah. Yeah, right. All right, welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate the comments. Again, you want to call in 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Looks like we have a few comments. Shelly's active today. Appreciate your comments, Shelly. Saying government did a horrible job to begin the pandemic. Now we're in endemic. They're taking credit for the measures the citizens used to protect each other. Yeah, a lot of times it's like people started doing their own thing, figuring the stuff out, and then the government kind of followed suit with that. I mean that's what's going to happen, right? It's what's that old you know the old saying where the leader is like, "Oh, there go my people. I must go catch them so I can lead them." I know I'm butchering that quote, but I feel like that's how a lot of politicians react. Um, and so it says free market would fix shortages. Hochul's creating shortages by trying to take control. Maybe like Hochul's less controlling than Governor Cuomo, but still same thing. I think right now like I'm more on the Biden administration about this because like they're trying to do all this stuff at the federal level. I mean, plenty to criticize Hochul for here, but I like this is the big trying to manage this from Washington D.C. is ridiculous, especially since the Biden administration recently acknowledged, and I think correctly, like, hey, this is something that the states and probably local government should be handling. Also individual responsibility. The other comment, I'd like to see the financial relationship between big pharma and health insurance. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of negotiations and whatnot going on between those. In some ways, making both them industries more profitable. That's how it goes, and there's oh man, like I could do. We probably have to do a whole show on all that and why we have the health insurance systems that we do, and some like incentives about pay that created the workplace-based health insurance programs. What used to happen with like mutual aid societies providing health insurance for each other, and why those got destroyed. And there's oh man, there's so much to it. I don't think I could even adequately speak. I'd have to bring on an expert to talk about that stuff. But yeah, government policy plus nudging from both those industries and the medical professionals kind of created a goofy system that we have today. So anyway, back to like the Biden administration stuff and the plan to hand out masks again. Like just I'll share the White House like fact sheet about the rap test. You can tell me this is the White House spin on it, right? Like, but I like posting these direct sources. They talk about they're going to, starting January 19th, they're going to allow people to order tests online too. They're going to get there in 7 to 12 days of ordering. Hope you don't need one quick though, because they're supposed to be getting a bunch of money to these test manufacturers to increase production, right? But at the same time, there's only so much increased capacity you can do when you have the government buying up millions of, it might be billions of these at this point, I don't even know, but buying 500 million tests. There we go, 500 million. And what's going to be tough is like if you need that test immediately and all these tests are bought up, but the federal government is going to counter for those, and you're not able to order it from your local pharmacy and have it shipped within a couple of days. You have this test from the federal government you can get in 7 to 12 days, but if you're having symptoms now, the CDC's saying like, well, that 5-day waiting period that you have, which is sort of confusing, but if you were exposed but you don't have symptoms, and then after 5 days, you can go back to work, but you have to wear a mask, but you kind of want to take a test because you want to know if you're contagious or not. You can't do that. Like, you can't use testing to like reinforce the safety of yourself and others if we have to go through the federal. And my worry is that this is going to create a scarcity of goods that's going to make it more difficult for average people to go and find tests through these private companies. That's my worry. Now, hopefully that ends up not being correct. But my inclination is that that's probably what will happen because the government is buying all these tests, and will probably reduce the supply that's available out on the open market, and make it more difficult for average folks to be able to just pick one up at the store. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Hopefully I'm wrong about that. Hopefully there's still an adequate supply of those, but a lot of folks might not be inclined to do that because they're like, why would I go out and buy one at a store when I can get a free one from the federal government or ask the insurance company to cover them, right? Now, they're not really free. You're paying for them. We're just paying for them through our tax dollars. And I'll be curious to see what like the price per unit is for these tests. What it ends up actually being. I don't know. Are they going to be paying more or less? Are they getting a good deal? Because they're buying in bulk. Who knows? I mean, that was the idea behind like the government paying for a bunch of the vaccines, right? It's like in theory they're supposed to be getting a lower cost and distributing them free for people, and you'd be able to get one, whatever you want without cost being a barrier. Okay, cool. But again, with the testing side, what happens to the open availability of being able to get a test instantly because we've started to develop distribution systems for being able to get this stuff, because markets can work, markets can solve problems. Again, this isn't a problem that really needed to be solved. It was already in the process of being solved by market forces, by looking at demand for these tests and how many people wanted them and what price points were acceptable to people. Like, even if you say, like, this is a nice thing for the government to do, free test, hurrah, like, this wasn't a problem that needed to be solved. But government decided to step in and intervene anyway, only because, what they need to look like they're doing something. And that's to me one of the most dangerous aspects of our political system, is the need to look like you're taking action. You can't just say, hey, this is already being addressed. Again, when Joe Biden said, like, well, we think COVID needs to be tackled at the state level, like, his side roasted him for that. Just roasted him, especially folks on the left, they just roasted him for saying, like, oh yeah, we need to let states handle this. But what if he was right on that point? Now he's taking action. He's doing what his political base wants him to do. He's going to chase his followers. And what do we get next? When Biden inevitably gets challenged from the left on the Democratic Party for the presidential nomination, and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of whether or not someone competent is actually going to emerge out of that race and can actually, win. But someone's going to challenge him from the left, and what are they going to demand that the government does? So the Democrats are also thinking of doing this mass distribution thing. They've talked about some of this stuff before. Like, we've had mass distributions in at the local level. Like, my city of Rochester, like, mailed out a bunch of masks back when this thing was, like, first starting, right? And okay, cool. Like, back then, people were afraid to go out. There really wasn't a lot of availability at that point, because there was kind of a run on those sorts of items. The medical system needed those, but now we've been doing this for almost 2 years. Like, there is supply, there is stuff available. Now Democrats want to mail 3 N95 masks to everyone. Like, that's where we're going with this. Do we actually need government to solve this problem? I mean, like, cool, like, acknowledging changes to the science of masks. All right, maybe cloth masks don't work, and if we just mandate this, we have the cloth mask, maybe that's not the best. So, all right, we're going to do N95 masks now. We're going to mail them to everybody. It creates the same problem, same issues that we're talking about with the testing and my worry about shortages there. Okay, so now there's going to be this massive order for masks. Okay, cool. And there'll be 3 masks for everyone. Now, that's not really going to solve the problem, like, at all. Like, 3 masks. I mean, if you're having to wear them all the time, right? If you're in a service industry job where you're wearing masks constantly, like, those 3 masks ain't gonna cut it. You're gonna have to go and get some anyway. So it doesn't actually solve the problem. For someone like me, I don't need them. I work from home most days. I have my own supply of N95 masks because I can go on Amazon and buy, like, a 50 pack of them for $20. Like, it's not that difficult. Like, why does government need to solve this? The problem has already been solved by markets. Why are they spending this money? Why would they want to do that? I don't know that it's happened yet, but why do they think they need to spend this money? It's ridiculous. This is another example of, like, government spending our money to create a problem, to fix a problem that has already been solved. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. If you want to participate in the show, give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. Oh, yeah. Oops. Yeah, shouldn't have done that. Yeah, good luck doing that. That would make sense to me. But, what would I know? Yeah. Okay, got it. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today. Thank you for joining us. We're live here in WYSL until 1 p.m. Give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Shout down the line to our friends listening over at WACK out in Newark, and our friends listening online, the Kevin Wilson pages, the Free Solution Facebook page, the Free Solution YouTube channel, and the group too. We got a group now on Facebook. Just look for Free Solution. Wherever you're listening today, appreciate y'all. We're talking about government, especially related to COVID. I mean, they do it with all sorts of stuff, right? Thank goodness, the government is here to save us from the problem that the government created. Hooray. Thanks, government. What would we do without you? And it's like we've kind of continued to learn these lessons. I'm normally very optimistic, about state of humanity, but it's frustrating when I see politicians have to continue to learn the same lessons over and over again and push the same, tired, broken solutions over and over again when we know that that's not necessarily the best way to move forward. And with the mask thing, which again, it drives me nuts how it's virtue signaling, right? Like it's a gesture that doesn't actually fundamentally chip away at the problem. Sending 3 masks, and I know it's not every Democrat who wants to do this, but sending 3 masks to every American, what was it going to solve, right? Like most people like me, okay, I gotta wear a mask at work. I already have my own supply. If I need them, I have N95s, KN95s, surgicals, whatever. I got them all. Got plenty of masks. I'm fine. And if I need more right now, there's a good supply on Amazon. Or local drugstores. Again, manufacturing lifted up. And not just because, and let's not give the Defense Production Act credit for this. I know Donald Trump, demanded that 3M, produce masks as the pandemic was breaking out, right? I'm not giving him credit for that. Like whenever the government seizes control of the industry and says you must make this thing, even with money, the logistics of doing that is difficult, and there's a kind of delusional sense of government power. If we will it, if we command it, then we can fix this thing. But maybe logistically, there's a reason why that stuff needs some time to unfold. It needs some time to happen. And there's a great conversation I had with Scott Linscomb here a couple of years ago now. It's about same thing related to the pharmaceutical industry stuff. Are we too reliant on foreign countries for some of the bases for pharmaceuticals? The answer is no, and we don't need the federal government to get involved and to go and contract with Kodak of all places to get them to make some of this stuff domestically. The market can solve its own problems. It doesn't need the hands of politicians to jump in and fix these things sometimes. Sometimes there just needs to be adequate space for free market actors to be able to solve these issues. And again, with the mask thing, what does it do to folks? I have enough. For many of you listening, you're going to think if the government just sends me 3 masks, what are you going to do with those? Either throw them out, or you should probably just keep them and use them if you're not going to wear them and do that out in public, right? If you're going to be that person, they're still good for working around the house. Are you doing some work around? At least do that, right? Don't throw them out. But I know some folks, if you're not going to wear a mask, you're not going to wear a mask at this point, unless you have to. I think you should if you're walking into a business that requests it. But is this going to solve that problem? Are more people going to mask because the government sends them one? No. Maybe they'll wear the N95 over a cloth mask if that's what they've been doing and that's the only one they have. Okay. Again, is 3 masks going to get you that far? No. Is it going to disrupt the supply chains more? If we have the government's ordering whatever 320 some odd million people, so you're ordering 1 billion masks. Maybe. Does it make things more hard to get? Who knows? Right? If we try to send folks out to take all the supplies of masks away, does it make it more difficult for someone like me to go out and just buy one? I don't know. Maybe. For now, I feel like there's enough manufacturers out there who hey, here's the thing that needs to be used every day by millions of people. I'm gonna do that. Naturally, what's interesting is we probably have the capacity right now too. Donald Trump, one of the things he did, and I'm not sure if it ever got reversed, is he said that Um, we couldn't ship medical supplies overseas too. Now I'm curious if that's uh, still in place. Yeah, I would like to think that that ought to be lifted right now. Again, we have given enough time, given a few weeks, months of adjustment, we can shift to solve these problems. And in fact, in many ways, the the free market has. And I know in some cases they got state and federal assistance. I get it. And what's hard is you end up with these kind of counterfactuals, right? Like when we go back and we look at this pandemic, a couple decades from now, we end up with these counterfactuals where we say like, well, could we have solved this problem without government? Well, we won't know because the government was there, right? The government was involved heavily in the vaccine process, right? And I get into arguments with folks about this sometimes about the vaccines, like, well, I'm against them because the government subsidized them. And aren't you against government subsidies? I'm like, yeah, I am, pro vaccine, but and I'm like, well, no one would have taken it if the government didn't subsidize them. I'm like, well, I don't know. That's a counterfactual. If the government had stayed out of it altogether, maybe, they would have gone on sale for $30 a pop. And for most folks, they would have said, yeah, that seems worth it to me. Let's get the vaccine for $30, whatever. And the health insurance companies probably would have covered it anyway. And, encourage folks to do it, probably giving it away for free to a bunch of other folks. This could have been a problem solved without government intervention. And we have trillions of dollars in, trillions of dollars in debts. And eventually, we're already seeing some of that. Eventually, it's going to come due. It's going to create more problems for us. That the payments on those debts are going to be enormous as we start to see more inflation. If we start to see interest rates rise, it's going to servicing those loans, servicing that debt is going to be huge. We'll keep piling on, piling on, piling on, and we don't look at the ways in which government ought to trust in its own people to address some of these issues. And not just individuals, but companies working across state lines, across international borders, working with various communities to be able to address the biggest challenges of the pandemic on a community by community level. It is possible, and going back to what are we going to think about this when we're looking at it 20 years later? Is could the government have stayed out, and would we be fine without that government intervention? Would we be better off without that? Looking at how much debt we've taken on for this, and would we be more robust if we had that system of being able to interact freely, of being able to produce stuff, and not having the government pick winners and losers in these processes where they say we're going to place all of our chips, all of our, all of our money in a handful of companies to be able to do this stuff sometimes, and they're the ones who are going to win in this situation where you might have had more nimble, manufacturers who are able to address these issues in different ways. And then you get the whole approval process of the FDA, and all these things add up, layer after layer after layer, make it more difficult for us to get out of this situation. Again, this is just the logistics of assuming that the pandemic is as serious as it needs to be, and we need to find a way to stop that. Now, I'm going off of that. That's really what I believe. It is serious. We need to find a way to stop it. Okay, who solves this problem? Is it Joe Biden, or is it all of us? I think all of us together. I know that sounds collectivist, but really people interacting freely with each other, all of us can solve these things if we want to. Instead, if we get consumed by fear and we say, oh, strongman, save us. Donald Trump, save us. Joe Biden, save us. That's where we get in trouble, because they can't have all the answers. Not that they don't, not that they're not smart enough. They can't have all the answers. It is not possible. We don't have that capacity right now, or probably ever, for any single authority, any single committee to be able to central plan our economy and central plan our way out of a disaster. Being more resilient, having a lot of systems in place to be able to address these issues in a decentralized way of addressing problems is what will keep us stronger in the end. Having one central authority and putting all of our faith in a small handful of people to solve our future problems is a dangerous, dangerous game. And when we come back, we'll talk about the ways in which it's not just dangerous for addressing these problems, addressing these disasters, but for our liberty itself. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll try to add some more space in there. Yeah. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today. Thanks again for joining us. Again, we're live here on WSL. Give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Live till 1 o'clock. I want to join the discussion quickly. We're talking about all these plans of distributing masks and tests and other stuff. And, the continued calls to, have the Defense Production Act invoked to, and the executive order from Biden administration, like, doesn't exactly invoke that. It says, like, well, we can, though, to solve this problem if we need to, right? Like, we'll direct resources that way, seize control of factories if we need to, which is what the Defense Production Act allows for. And so, like, there's a temptation, right? Again, when people are in crisis, for the government to come in and save us, and to say, like, oh, well, they're the only ones who can do this. They're the only ones who have the resources, the money, the wherewithal to force people to make the things and to solve this issue, right? But it is incredibly dangerous to do this. Now, again, I'm talking about, like, the economic side of this. I'm not even talking about the lockdown stuff, right? Like, that's, I mean, we talk about that all day, but that we're talking about, like, the economic side. Like, why is it dangerous to start to do that? Why is it dangerous for us as a people, as a culture, politically, to assume that government is the one who has to solve these problems. And I'll kind of reference back to The Road to Serfdom, Friedrich Hayek's book, and he talks about how centralized control over economic issues inevitably leads to political control. Like and if you haven't read the actual book, or there's some great like short summaries online too. Like it's worth checking out. Like why does this end up happening? It's because in order to start to exercise control of the economy, you're going to have to rein in the folks who are opposed to that, right? Like when you start to give this control to central authorities, these central planners, maybe it starts at a broad level, like you start at a congressional level, legislative level, and you give folks some extra control of the economy, and you have these committees of folks, and they try to talk to industrial leaders and develop regulations that seem to make sense, because the market, they say, can't handle it. Well, okay, so you start with that. That process is messy, it's difficult, it's tough. If you try to do too much in that process, you will fail. If you overpromise in that process, you will fail, and it ends up being slow and cumbersome, and it's easy to overpromise the outcome of those results, because you can't promise results in government policy. And I mentioned this before. There's a great Andrew Heaton podcast about this. It's a political reference, but where he talks about you can't promise government results. Government policy can only do two things. It can incentivize and it can punish. You don't know what you hope that your incentives and your punishments lead to good outcomes, the outcomes that you predict, but you don't know that that's going to happen. And so these policies, we don't always know what the outcomes of that are going to happen. People act in strange and different ways, and you'll start to hear people talk about like, well, the people are exploiting loopholes, or they're getting around this, or not complying, whatever. So you have to keep closing more and more of those, and every time you do that, it's more and more restrictions on your liberty, on the liberty of people to be able to act freely, to voluntary exchange with one another, And I'm not just talking about like the force and fraud stuff. I mean, just trying to tweak the knobs, tweak the levers of getting an economy that leads towards an idea of equality, right? Where the assumption is that equality is a good and worthy goal. Like you're going to need to keep building in more and more and more rules in order to do that. And those rules are going to start to creep beyond just the economic interactions that they started with. They're going to inevitably creep to the political interactions, because if you are agitating for freer markets, if you're agitating and calling attention to inflation that can derail those economic goals, it becomes more of a problem. And so here's what I think. Again, the spirit of economic freedom, the culture of economic freedom needs to be preserved. Like we need to continue to fight for that. And I see that, like in the Democratic Party, a lot of that's going away. And this has been a longer trend, but I see that in the Republican Party too. I see, hey, we had to trust Donald Trump to solve our economic problems. No, we don't. Like he doesn't have the answer. No matter, and this isn't a anti-Donald thing. He doesn't have all the answers, because what happens again in that process, that legislative process, that process I told you is messy. Inevitably, you're going to get to a point where they can't deliver on those promises. And then someone like Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or whoever the next person is, who may be great or may be terrible, start to say, well, I can solve that problem quicker. Let's not let Congress worry about that. I will solve that. Just let me solve it by executive order. And we see that more and more and more and more, and again, especially since the Bush administration, but really the tactic goes well before that too. But especially since then, we've seen all these problems. We assume that the government has to solve them. That's step one. The government has to solve this economic or social problem. Okay, so let's start with Congress. That's where we solve problems at the legislative level, right? Okay, cool. Well, Congress can't solve this problem. Political gridlock, dysfunction. A bunch of people are mad, understandably so, because you're asking them to give up control over their lives. And who has that control, whether it's your, cultural enemy, it matters. It matters because that's going to affect your livelihood. It's going to affect your ability to interact with people. It's going to affect your family. So you're very passionate about it. So you're like, no, I need someone else in. I need someone else to go in. And if you're going to do this, do it right, or fix it, or undo it. Get passionate about it. But because they can't solve that problem, more people say, well, Congress wasn't able to solve it. They weren't able to work out a compromise that was worthwhile. So we're going to move towards someone who can solve it quickly. George Bush promises that. Barack Obama promises that with his pen in his phone. Donald Trump promises that with his executive orders, and so does President Biden. They say they can just do this. But we've fundamentally given up the premise that they don't need to solve that problem, that Congress doesn't need to solve that problem, that we, the people, can actually solve these things, that there is already the capacity in free society, with us interacting with each other, without anyone from Washington telling us what to do, to fix these things. I know we can. We've done it many times in our past before. It can be bully pulpit leadership from Washington, too, be people cheering us on. But I know we have the capacity to do great things as a people without some person in Washington, D.C., whoever that next person is. But if we keep going down this road, inevitably, we're going to continue to give up more and more of our liberties to that central authority, to the executive branch, because that problem is too difficult, too messy to solve in the halls of Congress. So we say, all right, this takes too long. Just give another authority figure more power, until eventually Congress barely even matters anymore. And maybe we're at that point. But we have to go back to that fundamental premise. It's not who's in charge. It's not electing someone else that's going to fix this issue. It's not switching parties. It's changing your mindset. It's changing the mindset of, well, how can we the people, businesses, individuals, community organizations, solve the problems of our time on our own without waiting for Washington to do it? That's the mindset that we need to instill and encourage in each other. Voting's not going to save us in this. We need to start problem solving on our own. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Appreciate you being here. Larry Sharp is in tomorrow. I'll be back in on Wednesday. Talk to you then. Most likely. Yep, you too. Take care. Bye.